Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program as we come your way Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We are also here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news, and we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other locations. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews, and I hope that you will subscribe and then click notifications so that when I post a new conversation, you will be able to tune in and listen to any one or all of the 9 conversations, 9 different topics, 9 different guests. And I am so excited about that opportunity. There's something about the number 9, and maybe our guest can enlighten me a little bit more as well, although numerology may or may not be his strong suit. But what is his strong suit is being a returning guest to tell me your story. And we are so glad to have, as a returning guest to our program, a psychic therapist, a spiritual teacher, and author of The Secret That's Holding You Back. And Vincent Genna, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh, Richard, thank you for having me back. It's a joy and pleasure to be here with you. We had a great time the last time.
Oh, we've been here twice, and it's so much fun to have you back for a third time. And it isn't about the third time being the charm. It's charming to have a third opportunity to talk with you. Do you, just out of curiosity, delve at all into numbers and numerology and those kinds of things?
Actually, I have. I've actually written articles for Women's Day magazine. They were going into all the numbers. When you see this set of numbers all the time, when you see this set of numbers all the time. So we were talking about that, and it's interesting, you know, how these numbers come up for us in different ways. It's funny that you say the number 9. Number 9 for my wife and I is a very positive number. We met, our first date was on the 9th, March 9th. Mm-hmm. Our anniversary is July 9th. I actually believe our first child was conceived on the 9th, July 9th. And that's odd that I would know a specific day for that. Right. And so the number 9 was very important to us. And it came up as one of those things that everything is going to be great when it comes to the 9. So to actually know the specific here, I'm going to check this out right now. Mm-hmm. And numerology. Okay. Just so that you know, there's a word. Well, that's really interesting because this is what I thought. It represents spiritual growth, universal love, compassion, balance, and completion. So that certainly represents who you are, and what you're doing with your podcast, right? But spiritual growth means there's more coming to you. So you're just, may have 9 podcasts up there, but it's going to be a lot more than that coming up in the future. That would be the message that I would receive, and a little psychic, information along with it. Okay.
That's just between you and me. I won't tell anybody.
Yes, it is. There you go. Nobody else has to hear that.
Well, what is interesting too is, of course, as we were chatting at the front end before we started this conversation, much has happened, obviously, to both of us since the last time we got together. And one of the things that I find so fascinating, and I this is kind of weird in one sense, I'm actually looking forward to 2 years from now, 2026. And here's the reason why. As of this conversation that you and I are having, I just celebrated a birthday on the 26th. Well, I started looking at the years coming up. I'm going 6, 26, 26. Oh, that's interesting. And look at all those 6s, and so forth.
And 26, yes.
Yeah. And it's just, I'm always looking at patterns. I'm always seeing stuff like that.
Oh,
and I'm always
absolutely.
always fascinated.
And there is something with numerology. So happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
By any chance, did you happen to turn 26, Richard?
If only. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. But actually, there's a 6 in it, 64. And I always have looked,
Oh,
I've always looked at the birthdays in this context. And you referenced, of course, the conceiving of your first child on a particular date. Well, we don't come into this world celebrating our first birthday. We come into this world starting with day one of year one, but we don't celebrate the end until the end of that 365-day cycle.
right.
So the day of June 26th of 24, I finished 64 years on this planet. On the 27th, I begin day number one of year 65. Now, bear in mind, that's year 65 of what I anticipate, I hope for another 35 plus years of doing this, of hopefully having people such as yourself on the program to talk about the work that
Wow.
are doing in
You want to
it,
be around that long, Richard?
but not
Oh,
by much more,
cow.
not by much more, because I don't want to live forever. I know there are people who want to have their consciousness put
Right.
into a robot or AI or this or that. No, no, no. I'm a
No.
firm I'm a firm believer in this life is to be lived in its fullness, and then you move on to I want to know what's on the other side, what's in the next realm, even though
Right,
I
of
know you could
course.
probably share
Absolutely.
that with us in terms of what's on the other
Oh, I
side.
will. I absolutely will. But it's interesting that you put it that way because
Yeah.
I've told the universe and my children and wife that as soon as I start drooling and I can't control it, that's when I want to leave. So if that's 15 years from now, if that's 30 years from now, Richard, you turned 64. I
Mhm.
just turned 69 in April.
Ah.
And it's so funny that you say you ended
Mhm.
64 years and you're beginning 65. I say that you've accumulated 64 years because in my book I talk a lot about the unconscious mind. And
Mhm.
so in that unconscious mind, just like a computer hard drive, you've accumulated 64 years of knowledge, wisdom, experience,
Mhm.
and you're about ready to accumulate another year of that. So
Mhm.
you're a wonderful accumulation of all of this experience and knowledge and wisdom that you can use. Certainly, you use with your viewers.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that you are sharing. So, I mean, I can understand it, looking at it as an ending of a
Mhm.
period and a beginning of a new period.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's true too. But I like thinking of myself as a total accumulation. Plus, it also helps. Like if we talk about my book, The Secret That's Holding You Back, it
Mhm.
also helps in the understanding of the experiences you had at the beginning of your life help to influence your life now and your future. So I always have people working on those things that might be negative about what they accumulated in the beginning. So that's why I call it an accumulation, because you can't leave any of that behind you,
Mm-mm.
right?
No.
You were completely starting a new life. It would be like birth again, and everything would be wiped out like a hard drive. You get a new computer, you get a whole new hard drive, and you may transfer some stuff over, some stuff may be lost, whatever, but you can wipe out the disk of a hard drive on a computer, but you can never wipe out the information and
Yeah.
experiences in the human mind. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, you got a whole bunch. You may not have a whole bunch of hair, but you have a whole bunch of memories and experiences up there in that thing,
Yeah.
which is beautiful, by the way. I would shave my head any day if I could. It takes work to get it to look like this, and it's not even looking the same anymore. So,
Well, I actually started to grow it back a little while ago because of other issues, and I didn't like the way it was looking. So I said, no, I'm going to keep shaving it. I just keep
oh,
doing,
shave it. It looks,
and I've
oh
been
my God.
and I've been doing it for 23 years, and I really do like it much better. I like the look and then the beard and all that stuff. But anyway,
Yes, and the
I want to
beard. Yes, absolutely.
I
Go
want
ahead.
to ask you in regards
Yes.
to we'll dive into the book here in just a second, but I want to ask you. I know that I've had many people on this program who have talked about their psychic abilities, their
Mhm.
intuitive abilities, and so
Right.
forth. And many of them recognized those abilities as children, but they did not want to share or reveal that they had these things because of the potential stigma.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to when you first recognized that you had these abilities, and were you of the same ilk, so to speak, that okay, yeah, I got this, but I don't think I better tell anybody because I don't want to put myself through that.
Now, not at all. It was completely different for me than most other psychics and intuitives and mediums, okay? So, no, I didn't walk into my bedroom at 5 years old and see an angel sitting at the foot of the bed and telling me that I was supposed to be a spiritual messenger and I was going to do all of this. It was usually my mother with a belt ready to hit me for some whatever I did that she thought was bad. Um, no, however, as from childhood, I was the one that always was around the adults and interjected opinions and thoughts as a kid, right? I received the label of the little professor from my uncle, as well as smacks in the head from my mom and dad, because they were embarrassed that I would do that. But from the time I could really speak, and the earliest memories I have is from 5 years old on up, I just kept interjecting. Now, in hindsight, I see that that was an intuitive wisdom that I was tapping into, because one of the reasons why they would get so frustrated and angry with me, my parents, is because I was right most of the time. And my
Mm.
aunts and uncles, and I have an Italian family, so we were around each other all the time, right? And my aunts and uncles couldn't figure it out. My grandparents, they thought it was adorable, and some of my aunts and uncles thought it was adorable. It was only my parents that thought it was obnoxious because they were embarrassed by it, right? Children, that was the time period of children are seen and not heard. Well, not Vincent. Vincent was heard all the time, even in class, okay? I used to get in trouble for speaking and interrupting class all the time, right? So it wasn't until I was 28 years old when I was asking for the ability to be able to help a friend that was actually an enemy of mine turned friend at our 10-year high school reunion, and his life was falling apart. I didn't know how to help him. At that time, I was a professional singer, actor, and dancer, just to remind your listeners. Yes, I was in the movie Grease with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. That was my claim to fame as a dancer and a singer. And so that was my profession, but I had no idea how to help him. He was not one that would turn to anybody or share his difficulties with anybody, because he was not a little narcissistic at the time. And it was all about him and his successes and how fabulous his life is, blah, 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 blah. When I kept hearing BS, 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 when he would talk to me about it. So it was after a weekend visit with him, my wife and I are driving home from his expensive Connecticut home in a rich area of Connecticut, right? And I just cried out to God and begged God to give me the abilities to be able to help him and people like him. I just felt his heart breaking, but he couldn't do anything about it or wasn't going to do anything about it. And it was within a week of that prayer, and during a 3-month period, that all these paranormal things were happening to me. And so the ability started to come in then as a psychic. I also had a healing ability. I had a dream interpretation ability. That was because of my major guide, who introduced himself as Joseph, and that's from Canaan, the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat Joseph. He was my major spiritual guide until today. Eventually, I was trancing him very early on, way before Esther tranced Abraham, and way before anybody else. Daryl tranced Bouchard from another planet. And so, but I kept it to myself and just a couple of friends of mine, a couple that was there in the very beginning when this happened to me, and they wanted to know everything that was going on with me. So they helped me to accept what was going on. Of course, my wife, who had been with me since I was 17 years old. So that's how it began. But I did not accept it totally, and I kept digging my heels into it. And it took me many years before I truly accepted it, because Richard, I just could not see myself calling myself a psychic. Those were loonies from California, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Or when you see you're driving down the highway and you see a palm on the side of the road, readings by Sister Sarah, and I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Put a palm up on the side and say readings by Cousin Vinny? What it's like, what was that going to be? It's just like, I could just see that scene now in the movie. It's like, yo, you got problems, man. Let me tell you what's going on. All right. Sit there, shut up, change your life, damn it. What the hell is wrong with you? It's like, I couldn't see that at all. So I dug my heels in for a long time. Eventually, as soon as I accepted it, which I did, things started happening which were remarkable and what I call miraculous. And so that led me to who I am today and on your show for the third time, fourth time, but third time, fourth
Third
time,
time, third time.
third time,
We'll
third
make it.
time.
I
Here we
promise you,
go.
we'll make it four. We will make it.
Okay, that sounds great with me. But that's how it came about
Yeah.
with.
And I have to say that's fascinating from the standpoint that my mother asked me many years ago, in a conversation we were having about, spiritual things and it's just all the esoteric metaphysical stuff. She said, "Have you ever had any supernatural experiences?" And I says, "Well, if I did, I didn't know that that's what they were because it just appeared normal to me. So there's no way that I could actually give any examples of something like that.
Absolutely.
What I do love are dreams. And I
Yes.
suppose those can also be interpreted in some instances as supernatural.
Yes.
Case in point, a dream I've shared many times. This was long before 1996, which is a significant date as well for me, a year. I had a dream about my grandmother who passed away in our home in Phoenix over Thanksgiving weekend when I was young. And I had this dream where I was driving a white van. And that's significant because at one time my parents drove a white Dodge Caravan, which they gave me to drive after I had a lens implant in 1996. Now talking about the sixes and divisible by three,
Yeah,
March
really.
March 6th, 1996. So there I am driving on this pristine highway. I come across this forest off to my left side of the road. The sun's coming through the trees and everything. So I pull off, going down this road, this road into this giant meadow. And I pull in front of this giant stone house, this house built with stones and beautiful arched windows. And I go inside, and guess who's inside? My grandmother. Not a
Your
word is
grandmother.
spoken. She just gives me a hug as to say, everything is okay. And the why that was so significant wasn't just because of my grandmother being in the dream, but because of the fact that I was driving in the dream, and that shortly after I had that dream, I had the lens implant, and then the next thing I know, I'm driving my mother and father's white Caravan. I had no idea that I could have interpreted that as a premonition, but again, I had no points of
Yeah.
reference because
Part premonition.
yeah, because
Part.
I had let go of the desire to learn to drive, to even see well enough, or be part of. Certain
Wow.
states have medical review programs where your doctor will sign off and say, yeah, this person can see well enough to drive and so forth. And I didn't even know that existed in Phoenix. So it wasn't until later in my time in Phoenix that'll happen. But anyway, so in terms of these kinds of supernatural or spiritual things, would you say that maybe like myself, there are people who are having these experiences, but they don't have any points of reference? So they don't necessarily poo poo it or they're necessarily afraid of it. It's just like, oh, okay. It's like I just came across a good friend who's still alive and da 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 da. That they don't recognize them as such.
The answer to that question, simply put, is yes, absolutely. People are receiving messages all the time and having paranormal experiences like that, supernatural experiences, whatever you wish to call them, miracle experiences, and they don't know what to do with it. I will add to your dream, by the way,
Mhm.
okay, with the white van. Since your dream was spiritual in nature, that means all aspects of it and all symbols in it were meaningful in different ways. The van and you driving it wasn't just a premonition that you were going to get the van. It was a premonition that what does a van hold? It holds more people than a regular car. You were going to be driving people in the future in your way to their enlightenment, to their soul. You went, saw your grandmother, that was a spiritual, enlightening experience. Well, you were going to take people to that same and similar type of experience, which is exactly what you're doing right now. That's the reason why the van was also in the dream, the meaning of the van, because really your brain could have used any other vehicle, really. It's not just about well, because of what you have in your life, that's what happens in your dreams. No, because you can't control your dreams. And so whatever your brain or soul's mind brings to your dream, it's for a specific meaning. It didn't just give you a car or another car because you getting that lens implant meant that you could drive any vehicle then.
Yeah.
And okay, you were going to get your parents' vehicle, so why did you really need to be told beforehand that you were going to get it? What? Is because just so that you could say, oh, I had a telepathic dream. You didn't do anything about it. You didn't cause it to happen. So therefore, it wasn't an influence on you. Therefore, it was a message. And you got to look at things as when we have these intuitive or these paranormal experiences, we want to really break them apart and see what is it really telling us? So yes, you're definitely going to be enlightening and giving vision. So not only did you receive vision, but now you're giving vision to other people with your podcast and the information that you're sharing, right? So I know people all the time that have these paranormal experiences and they're fearful of them. They don't know what to call them. In fact, near-death experiences are supernatural experiences. And there are organizations, there's a big organization, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. I actually spoke at many of the chapters, including their conference last year in Washington, D.C., and they need to understand these people who go through near-death experiences, so many of them don't know what to do with that. They listen to everybody else's near-death experiences. They hear all these new abilities some of these people have, but what they're not recognizing is the supernatural message that was given to them. People who go through some of these paranormal experiences is to help wake up your conscious mind. Your soul mind is already awake. It's attached and connected to the God force, the higher forces, the higher consciousness beings, the other realms, all of that. But your conscious mind, human mind, is not. And so there's a connection between the two, but definitely a blockage that shields us. That's the reason why I wrote my book, that shields us from our soul's mind and the true messages that are trying to make their way up to our conscious mind. All right, so if you have these great defense mechanisms and you've got a strong protective mechanism over anything that's below in your deep psyche because you're afraid of any negative stuff coming up, right? You're also pushing behind all of those positive things. So your soul is going to do what it can to shake you by the shoulders, wake you up, cause something to happen. And it doesn't make a difference what it does to the human body. It's really funny. When we had our son, and he started walking around as a toddler, he was very curious about fire, right? And so whenever, when we were at a barbecue, he'd be over by the barbecue watching the flames start, right? And we had a gas stove. And he would constantly come to it when my wife was cooking or I was cooking. And we were concerned about him getting burnt some one day. So what I did is I took a match, I lit it, I blew it out. And I waited until it was still hot, but not hot enough to really cause a pain. And I touched it to his finger. And I told him, this is what fire feels like, but what worse. And if you put your finger or hand in here, you will burn it even worse than what that feels like. So he never came near fire again. But believe it or not, once he became an adult, the first thing he wound up doing is going out and getting a fire pit because he just loves sitting around watching the fire. I don't know what that was. Maybe he invented it in a past life. I don't know. He was, or an Indian, and that's what his job was, create fires. But so the reason why I bring up that story is if in human form, I am willing to do something like that to teach him a lesson, what would the soul do to the human body to teach it or wake it up if it has to? And so many people go through these crises, whether they're near-death experiences or other things, a crisis tends to turn a person towards the source or go on a spiritual journey to ask questions, and that tends to wake them up. So there's all different ways that the soul will do it. But yes, and for you and me, we accepted it, even though I resisted what I was supposed to do with it. I was accepting that all happened to me, and because I went right into researching, went to education material, all of that stuff. So I studied everything about the paranormal that I could just to figure out what was going on with me. And the message was I was supposed to be using it and be a spiritual teacher, and I didn't want to use it. I wanted to still be an actor. So that's why I resisted. Other people are just fearful of what's to come and what they're going to find out. And people would say that they fear the unknown, but actually that is a fallacy. Humans do not fear the unknown. They fear the known. It's why a 2-year-old child who's walking, a toddler, a 2 or 3-year-old, would walk right in the middle of the street. Why would it do that? It's because it hasn't learned that it could get hit by a car. Mm-hmm. So that's the unknown to the child, but he just walked right into the street. Once we find out these things that can harm us, that's when we become fearful. So we become fearful of what could happen. So the first person who walked in the forest at night had no idea that it could be attacked by an animal. He could be attacked, or she could be attacked by an animal, or something else happened to them until it happened. Then the other people, the rest say, hey, no, I'm not going in the forest in the middle of the night. You never know what's going to attack you there. So it's not the unknown. When it comes to the paranormal, we come from a paranormal state. We come from an energy state in other dimensions. That's where we were created. So we know all of that stuff. And psychically, intuitively, we know everything. It's within us, right? But the experiences that people had when we were in Atlantis, we misused our power. Okay, we all know that somewhere inside of us. So now we come here and we're supposed to be learning about our intuition and more so that we can evolve, but we fear what happened before. So we don't know we fear what happened before. We just have the fear and we say it's the fear of the unknown. And it's not. It's the fear of our power. Marianne Williamson said it perfectly in her book, Return to Love. There's a whole passage that I absolutely love, her best writing, that starts off, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. And people can go online. They can go to my website, or they can go online to YouTube and Google that and listen to the rest of it, because it's magnificent. So we fear our power. So when it squeaks through with some people, oh, they don't know what to do with it. Not to mention their group of people or the time period may think they're crazy, and they're just like you, don't want to say things to anybody because they, you got that, like you said, that label, because not because it's the unknown, because they know. They've heard other people being criticized and labeled, so that's why they don't want to share it themselves. So it's always what we know that causes our fears and interpretation of that. But that is I think that's the Reader's Digest abridged version. You should hear my unabridged version to that question.
That's what's nice about
Good Lord.
these long form
Tell
programs
me
is
about it. But I
I love
need
it.
people to understand the answer, right? I
Exactly.
need people to understand that.
Absolutely. By the way, the website, ladies and gentlemen, is Vincent Genna, Vincent, and then GENNA.com. We'll be linked to that website as well, so that you folks can go there and check out, of course, what he's talking about, as well as check out the book that we're talking about as well, The Secret That's Holding You Back. And we are here, of course, talking about lifting the veil. There's a copy of the book right there that, of course, folks are also looking at. And lifting the veil and revealing the secret that holds us back. And it seems to me, through just the explanation that you have just shared with us, that the secret isn't really that secret. It's actually it's fear that's holding us back. That's the secret, and we need to figure out. And of course, the whole wonderful aspect of acronyms. Fear is, of course, false expectations or experiences appearing real. It's often said that the thing that it's roughly 90% of what we fear or worry about never happens. It never happens. And I found my wife made me aware of something that I probably was aware of before, but she kind of verbalized it this morning when we were looking independently at our respective little videos that we go through on like Facebook or YouTube, what have you. I like looking at the shorts, those kinds of things, because some of them are just fascinating, especially the kindness ones, where an individual is goes into a restaurant and says, "Hey, how you have $1,000 hamburgers?" I don't know what the heck that is. How much is a hamburger? I said, well, can I get 20 of them or 40 of them? Okay, are we having a party? Well, no, I'm going to go feed the homeless. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll give them to you for free. And you can, no, you don't have to do that. No, we're going to help out. And he takes the burgers out and he feeds the homeless. And yes, it's for the day. They're giving them a fish rather than teaching them how, but it's better to do that under the circumstances than do nothing at all. So, but I love those. I love those kinds of shorts. And of course the DIY kinds of things. And she says to me, she says, do you know that the more you watch the positive videos and those kinds of things, the more of them come up? In other words, they weed out a lot of the negative stuff.
Of course.
And it's like, okay, when it comes to AI and algorithms and those kinds of things,
right.
It's like, okay, yeah, I like that. I think that that's a perfect use for artificial intelligence or the algorithms. Just don't start throwing advertising. I remember once I bought a hat online. Okay, I bought a hat. There were no pop-up ads for hats until I started looking for one. As soon as I bought it,
oh, of course,
I was inundated. I'm going, wait a minute. Your algorithm should have told you I just bought one. Okay?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Anyway, so I'm curious about this aspect of the combination of AI and algorithms, those kinds of things that like to predict our. Go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt right there because you said the most important word. It cannot predict, not the same way as you and I can predict.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why. And this is what everybody needs to know about AI. AI is all the information and data in the world that there has been recorded only
Mm-hmm.
recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Is fed into these large computers and servers, okay? So now the computer is programmed. When you ask it a question, it's going to seek out every piece of information that's already been programmed in there to come up with a really good answer. Now, here's the interesting thing about prediction. And as a psychic, I almost say that to some people. Based on the previous evidence of how you've behaved and the choices you make, this is the answer and the future of where you could be going, just based on your previous evidence. However, if you change even one thing, the future is going to be completely different. Mm-hmm. AI cannot predict the changes. It can only predict, given the data of how something happened before, it could then say chances are, probability. Even in research, all research can never prove anything. Not one piece of research can prove anything. All it can do is give a significant probability based on previous evidence. Okay. But here's the thing about humans, which is fabulous. We change our thoughts, we change our behaviors in an instant. Any single instant, you change. For example, when you get up in the morning, I absolutely know people that have an absolute specific routine. They get out of bed, they go into the bathroom, they wash, they brush their teeth, they take their medication, then they go and they make a cup of coffee. And it's the same routine every morning. However, then they go on vacation and they can't do it the same way because there's no coffee machine there. It's not the same coffee. They have to go downstairs to get it, which means they have to dress and shower first before they have their coffee. So, and they could be totally thrown off. But any other human changes those routines, even by the moment, they don't get up at 8:20, they get up at 8:30. That changes it. They change. So AI cannot predict those changes. So, because that's what scientists, and I wish I could talk to them now about it, but that's what scientists are wondering, and they're depending on AI to be able to predict things for us. All the movies that you've seen about AI and robots can't possibly happen because of that, because of all the instantaneous changes. AI will never be able to think for itself because it can only use the data that we choose to put in to those machines, right? They can make robots because we put in all the information about how a human behaves and acts. Okay.
I think that's a fair and an appropriate distinction to be made in that regard. And of course, that concept of prediction, if you will, is also true with folks such as yourself who are intuitive, who are psychic, who are whatever the term you want to use. But the difference is that whereas you, as a medium, are accessing the possibilities down the road, with every passing moment, because everything is in motion, change being the constant of the universe, what you share in this moment, okay, tell me, where will I be tomorrow at 3 p.m.? And you would say, okay, da 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 da, if that was your skill. All right, give it 5 minutes. Okay, where am I going to be tomorrow at 3 p.m.? It's going to be totally different because everything is in motion. Different choices and decisions have been made, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the areas I want to get into here with one of our slogans that we use here, giving people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. And of course, we both know the wonderful little phrase about how all of the choices that you have made up to this point have brought you here where you are. And I take it a little step further and I say, believe it or not, folks, even the choices that you made as a child, even though you never heard of Vincent Genna or Richard Dugan ever before as a child, the choices you made of playing in the dirt or running down the street or whatever it happens to be, those choices have brought you where you are today. I mean, it sounds kind of far-fetched, but it is true.
Oh, no, it is. It's absolute. It's scientifically shown.
Yeah. But what I also love is the next part of the concept is, and all of the choices that you will make from this point forward will determine where you will be in the future. But I loved one of my guests who threw this in, and they said, yes, however, the choices that you make today are determined by your perception of what you think the future will be. So if your glass is half empty, your choices are all going to be based upon Armageddon, the end, apocalypse, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if your glass is half full, by the way, what's your you can think about this for a moment about what your glass is half full of. Mine happens to be a nice, smooth Irish cream myself, or maybe even
Oh
half
yeah,
glass of.
you have. I have a whole theory about that, about about the glass and positivity. So we'll
Yeah,
talk about it as soon as you're
but
done.
it's fascinating when you think about that. And I like to consider myself. Matter of fact, I interesting piece of information. I've been going through boxes and boxes in my studio trying to downsize and so forth and get rid of certain things. And there's part of me that goes, some of this stuff's going to end up in the landfill, which is really kind of sad. And then so I'm
Right.
thinking, okay, can I put this in a box and maybe give it to somebody else? And I like to think about that. But anyway, I
Right.
came across what some of us do get, or our parents will have for us somewhere down the road, our baby book, which has all the pertinent information about our birth and where we were born and all
Course.
this kind of
Right.
and then pictures of us as children and so forth. And one of the things that I came across, which I thought rather fascinating, and again, I say this, ladies and gentlemen, I do my best to say this with all humility, but she wrote in there, my mother wrote in there that that everybody seems to like him, that has certain charm and so forth. And um, I'm not going to say that at the age of 64, that's the same. I'd like to think so. It would be nice, but
Oh
then
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
you
Very
can't
easy.
you can't please all of the people all of the time.
Right. Your personality started with you came in with some extra gifts of
Yeah,
personality.
yeah,
It's the concept of nature versus nurture
yeah,
that psychologists like to believe. We have partial stuff we bring with us, and then we also have a clean slate to start something new. But
yeah.
absolutely, personality you bring in with you. You don't develop it, you bring it.
Yeah. And I find all of that, the combination of all of this with the choices and so
Right.
forth, and then the perception of what we think the future will be and so on.
Well, I do want to comment on that because
Sure, please.
I want to correct that guest.
Sure, please.
It's not your perception about the future that is going to affect the future. It's your perception about today that's going to affect the future.
Oh,
Because
okay.
here is where you have your negative attitude is today about today's things. So perception is reality to start with because we're manifestors. So whatever you perceive life to be is what you're going to create. So what you perceive life to be today is what's going to happen tomorrow for you because that's how you wind up manifesting outside of you and manifest tomorrow. So I use what happened to you in the past causes you to perceive the way you perceive today,
Mhm.
which then makes your future. So I work on changing what people believe from the past because there is a shield, that veil that we were talking about that you mentioned. It's not so much the fear that is the secret. The secret is what you believe, what you truly believe about yourself. That is the secret that's getting in the way because the human mind has anomalies in it. The brain actually causes this. The two highest functions of the brain is one, to keep us alive. That's the highest function. Two, to protect us in order to keep us alive. So how does it protect us? Well, think about that physically. When the coronavirus was around, which it still is, one of the symptoms is a fever.
Mhm.
Well, the fever is not caused by the coronavirus. The fever is caused by the brain.
Mhm.
It tries to make your body into an unlivable temperature, so it raises your temperature in order to try to kill the virus or
Mhm.
any other bug inside of you. That's where a fever comes from. Also, fainting is a protective mechanism,
Oh.
right? If you are not getting enough oxygen, and hydration helps your body get enough oxygen. People pass out when they're not hydrated well enough, right? Or if they just climbed the mountain and it's a dense oxygen up there and they're not breathing right, your brain will make you pass out. Why? Because laying down flat, a human can take in more oxygen, especially if there's no consciousness and you're relaxed. So it
Mm.
makes you pass out. It doesn't pay attention either with the fever or passing out, that it can cause something else. Like a fever, if it goes too high, can actually kill you, and it certainly causes discomfort. Also, passing out, depending upon where you're passing out, if you pass out on your bed, you're fine. You pass out in the middle of the living room, you crack your head open on your coffee table on the way down. So it doesn't pay attention. Its agenda is to protect you in that moment with the issue. How does it do that with emotional problems and pains? So you're growing up and you're developing these, what I call I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not smart enough. Whatever the I'm not is, you cannot function in daily life constantly paying attention to that. So your brain will create a shield purposely. I call that shield the adult made mind shield, and it will block those feelings. So what gets in the way are those blocked. That's the secret. The secret is what you really believe about yourself that is hidden. Why is that so important? Well, in psychology, we teach cognitive behavioral therapy. We actually give you defense mechanisms to be able to function and not pay attention to those things. But in a world of spirituality, when we're trying to evolve, Richard, and we're trying to grow and recognize our magnificence and divinity, we've got to know what we believe, because you are connected to the law of attraction, the force, the power in your unconscious mind, not your conscious mind. Therefore, whatever that accumulation, and here I say that word now again and why it's useful, whatever beliefs you have accumulated in your unconscious minds, that's what's going to cause your manifesting the future and your present. So you've got to heal and change the beliefs. It's not thoughts. When it comes to law of attraction, there's a fallacy going on out there, or a misunderstanding. It is not thoughts that manifest. It's beliefs that manifest. So you can think all you want about what you desire, what you think you deserve, who you think you are. But if you truly don't believe that in your unconscious, deepest part of your mind, you are not going to manifest that. So I work on bringing those beliefs to the surface, because that's what you have to do in order to change them and reprogram that little voice inside of you. So it's not so much the fear, it is the fear of not being lovable, the fear of not being deserving, the fear that you are not good enough. And so if you want to use fear there, yes, absolutely. But that is the secret. It's what you're really believing about yourself. And that's why we're manifesting things the way we are and what we don't like, besides what we do like. So that's how that process works. But yes, I just wanted to comment on that. It's your perception of today is what creates tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, that glass, okay. There is another fallacy of what positive attitude is. People think that if they say, oh, I think the glass is half full, that's a positive attitude, versus I think the glass is half empty. That is such a ridiculous argument, because the word empty does not necessarily equate to negativity. Okay. When you're driving your car, okay, you want to have a positive attitude. Oh, I actually have an eighth of a gallon of gas left. That's good. No, that's not. That's bad, because you're about ready to run out of gas while you're on the highway. You have to be able to say, holy shit, I only have an eighth of a tank of gas left. I better go fill up. So that's why empty is not negative or positive. It's just a description, okay? Here's what a positive attitude is. Oh, I've got a glass of water. Because here's what's funny about whether it's half full, 3/4 full, or 1/4 full. You go over in some places in third world nations, and they see that half glass of water, they are thrilled that they have any water. So to them, half full is positive. It's water. So let's stop looking at the glass and labeling it as either positive or negative, because that's not what positive or negative is. being aware that it's raining outside, being aware that it's 20 degrees below zero is not a negative attitude. And yeah, like my family's up in Maine, and when it's 17 degrees below zero, they don't walk outside and say, well, at least it's not 20 degrees below zero, right? That would be considered a positive attitude. No, they better get their asses back inside and put on warmer clothes because it's friggin' 17 degrees below zero and they're going to freeze to death.
That's right.
That is not a negative attitude. That's awareness and being smart. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned earlier, as we move on to other things, we're talking, by the way, with Vincent Genna, who is a psychic therapist, among other things, and sharing with us, of course, the work that we're talking about in general today about the secret that holds you back. I was I was going through a personal growth program, and they had these Monday evening sessions where there's sort of a booster shot. This was back in the 90s. And one of the papers that they handed out, and the gentleman who basically was putting this together, his name was George Adair. Now, he's not the famous philosopher. He was a printer in Phoenix. He owned a print shop called Papago Printing, but he held these weekly 5-day intensives, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Similar to what they did in the 80s, 70s, and 80s with programs like EST. I went through LifeSpring, which was an outgrowth. But he handed out this paper on this one Monday evening, and it was entitled, "Where Shall We Hide the Truth?" Where shall we hide the truth from man? The gods all cried when he was made. How can we guard our secret now? They are each of them so afraid. Hide it in the earth. He will mine it. Hide it on a mountain. He will climb it. Even in the sea, he will find it. Where shall we hide the truth from man? And I won't go on any further. Well, I will tell you, the author was a Sebastian Temple. And I believe this was actually, it's written by and sung by a Sebastian Temple. I have not found his version yet musically. But what I found so fascinating about this, and I bring this up fairly regularly on this program, and you were referring to knowing who we really are inside, deep down inside. Who are we really? And of course, the conclusion of this particular poem, I will call it, is that we'll hide it in the heart of man. He'll never look there. And so when we talk about the question of who we really are, first of all, from your perspective, who are we generally as a species, as human beings? Who are we really? And then on an individual level, whether you use yourself or myself as an example, who are you? Who am I really? And then the third part of this, and I know I'm dumping a lot on you, I tend to nest questions, and it's
Worry about it. Dump, dump, dump.
And then the third part of this is, and how do we access, not to just believe, but to know who we really are?
No, that's an excellent question, and I'm going to start off with a very short answer to one part. Who we are as human beings has absolutely no meaning. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're here to discover. It's like saying what a Mercedes is compared to what a Camaro is. Yeah, there's differences there, but none of that really matters. It's what you're going to use it for. And so who we are as humans is a vehicle. That's it. It's a vehicle for experience. It's who we are as souls that matter. And who we are as souls, and a short story is, there was, and we can acknowledge, at least those on a metaphysical and a spiritual path, we believe that there was definitely metaphysical, by the way, means other than physical, more than physical. So we're acknowledging in that field that there's more than physicality, that there's energy, that we exist as an energy force, and that energy force was created by a higher energy force. And as humans, we call that energy force God. In all different cultures, they call it other names: Yahweh, Elohim, El Shaddai. There's all different names for this creative force. Okay. But in reality, the way that creative force created us was by taking a part of itself and dividing it into us. We are not outside of that force. It did not create us as independent beings. We have individual minds, but it did not create us as independent beings. It created us as part of itself, which was meant when it was said, we are created in its image. And the funny thing is that because we're humans, we turned, instead of turning ourselves into a higher force energy image, we turned the God force into a human image. Okay. That's why we gave it, he's an old man with white hair and a white beard. Okay. But the truth is that's not who we are. So as long as we were created in its image, that meant that we have all the understanding that it has, and it is connected to everything. Therefore, we're connected to everything. We have all the wisdom, all the knowledge that it has. Edgar Cayce says it in this manner. As we come down to earth, our job here, and we chose human form, we created a human form because everything else was physical on this planet. So in order to live here, we had to create a physical form in order to live here, which, by the way, and I won't get into it on this show, we were never meant to incarnate on the planet. That was a big mistake. It's like we can go to Disney World and Disneyland because we love vacationing there and it's so much fun and joyous, but you wouldn't move there, would you? No. You would go back home. Well, the earth was never meant to be a home. It was meant to be a vacation spot, a visiting spot to discover ourselves more. But that's beyond the point. We'll talk about that another time. So as long as we incarnated here, we're incarnated here to now discover what we know. So in other words, when we went to school and we learned algebra, for example, all the knowledge about algebra and percentages and things like that were up here in the brain in a conscious realm, right? That we used our left brain thinking. But we truly didn't own that knowledge until we experienced it. So the first time we had a job, we got paycheck, and we went to the store and we bought a pair of jeans, and it was 20% off. Now we see money coming off of the cost of the jeans, and we go, oh my gosh, that's what a percentage is. Now I understand it. So in order to know what we truly know deep inside, we have to experience it. And so each time around, we come in choosing to experience more of what we know. Our job is to get to the point of knowing what we know. Knowing what we know. And Edgar Cayce starts with, we know, but we don't know we know. That's how we first come down here. Here's where the problem was, and the reason why we wiped out, because the next question that my answer should bring up to most people, why don't we already know it? Well, we tried that. We tried that in the Garden of Eden. Why do you think God or the power said, and this is, by the way, that's all metaphoric. It wasn't a true story. It wasn't a true garden, and there was no Adam and Eve. It's all metaphor and metaphysical messages. There was a tree of knowledge. It happened to be an apple tree. You know what's really funny about that story? Nobody asked why God would create an apple tree that everybody loves apples, this delicious fruit, but we weren't allowed to eat it. What a tease. What a friggin' God that was. That would tease us like that. That's like taking ice cream or cookies and putting it in the middle of the table and telling the children, you can't eat those now. Don't you dare eat those cookies. That would be horrible parents teaching the kid that. There was a reason. God was saying, this is the tree of knowledge. You have within you all you need to know, but don't go in there and try to devour and eat everything you know. You've got to wait and take your time with it because you're children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all the stories that we know of children, they want to know all they need to know, even as a kid. And they think they do as they're growing up, right? By the time they're teenagers, they think they know even more than you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so all they cared about in the Garden of Eden, the Adam and Eve, or us, is knowing what we knew. And we opened that door too quickly. And again, God was right. Oh my God, you learned about shame, you learned about embarrassment, you learned about sorrow way before you know how to handle it. Thus, that's how we're living here. And so, what we decided to do is close that door. We came down and we wiped out our memories in this earth form so that we can slowly discover. And even then, people come down choosing to discover more and get hit in the head with all of this. You know, I've never known what forgiveness is, so I have to go down there and experience forgiveness. So they have all these people doing things with them. Oh, shit, I got to forgive everybody in my life. Holy crap, because of all they did to me. Man, oh, man. Or I don't know what it is to lose somebody you love. And so they come down here choosing to experience that, and they lose all of these people in their lives, and they can't handle it. They're depressed, and they stop their growth, right? Mm-hmm. So even now, we're choosing the wrong things to learn, but this is the whole reason of our existence. So that now, to sum that all up, who we are spiritual beings in a physical form, trying to remember our divinity, our magnificence, our unlimited ability to manifest and create, just like a co-creator with God, the God force, the higher forces. That's what we are here. And we don't even need to be here to experience that. We think we do. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, we've incarnated way too much on this earth. And that's why you're seeing a lot of problems on it today, because we're limiting our unlimited ability. And if you keep compressing an unlimited force into a limitation, it explodes, just like the atom bomb did, right? Well, that's what we're doing. You're seeing a whole bunch of people imploding and exploding on the planet. But we're trying to learn our divine nature and who we are so that we can evolve to that higher being that we're meant to be. So that is who we really are. And who I am is I've chosen in this lifetime, and so did you, to be a messenger of that understanding, to help remind people. And the way you begin to remind people in my path is by unblocking all those blockages, mm-hmm. helping people to change what they really believe and believe in themselves and love themselves enough to know that they can create the life of their dreams. And then as they do that, they recognize their own brilliance, their own magnificence, and even their own divinity. And so they are able to manifest everything they want after that. That's my role of who I am as a spiritual being having my physical experience here.
Vincent Genna is my guest here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And I, in taking everything that you have just shared in lieu of the question, the three-part question that I asked, it brings to mind a question that was asked of me some time ago, in the heat of a conversation. It was a rather heated conversation, and or I should say, no, it was a question, and the question was: so you're telling me? And I'm not going into the previous part of the conversation. You're telling me that you've never made a mistake in your life? To which, and again, this was my understanding at the time, and it actually still is to this day. My answer to that question was, no, I have never made a mistake in my life. What I have done is had life lessons or learning experiences. Going to your point, Vincent, that if you want to label it right or wrong or sin, and I find the phrase in the Old Testament about how the sins of the father are passed on to the sins of the son to the seventh generation. Yeah. I'm sitting here going, well, then we should be done. But um, from my perspective, when you start looking at it from the metaphysical perspective, and boy, when I threw that phrase to a bunch of Christians that I worked with back in the 80s and early 90s, I said, don't you understand Christianity as a metaphysical philosophy? He said, oh, how dare you? I said, do you even know the definition of the word? And of course, back
Right.
then I would
That's
use the
important.
phrase, the metaphysical, it's beyond the physical. And Christianity, that's what Jesus taught. Everything he taught was beyond the physical. Now, when he was dragged back into the material world with the questions that were asked, what are we going to eat and what are we going to drink and what are we going to wear? Like, the lilies of the field, I guess the Sermon on the Mount was what it was. He says, look, from a metaphysical perspective, the one who created you, your creator, is going to take care of you. He takes care of the birds. They don't work. They don't toil. Look at the lilies of the field. Look how beautiful. And then eventually they're going to wither and die. And yet there they are. And you are one of his offspring, he, she, what have you. How much more? And that's when this whole concept of love comes up, and I think about that in terms of the different things within the ancient wisdom teachings, about what love is and isn't, and the way God is and isn't, and so forth. And I'm thinking, you talked earlier about how a parent would treat their child and so forth, and they wouldn't do
Right.
this or that or the other. And I think the same thing. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why would a creator create these beings in his image, in its image, and then use extortion to get them to believe and follow him? That doesn't make any sense at whatsoever. I don't know. My parents never did that to me in terms of getting me to obey. Yeah, my mother and father, when I was little, they would whip out the belt, and sometimes just whipping the belt out was enough. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I know.
There was a certain level of discipline, but I find it so fascinating how people hang on to these concepts of, again, the right and the wrong instead
Okay.
of, hey,
I
we're,
know there are opportunities. I
yeah,
know there are opportunities, Richard.
yeah,
However, here's the problem with that. Not everybody takes those opportunities. So then what is it left with? If they
yeah.
don't take the opportunities and they don't grow from it, then it can be a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I put it is actually it's higher choices and lower choices. Even Edgar Casey puts it that way. It's higher choices and lower choices and consequences that go with both,
Okay.
positive or right. You make a lower choice, there is a negative consequence that comes with that, and that's where the learning comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, right? Oh, I'm not going to do that again. However, that was great, and that philosophy was great in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer good
No, it's not.
because everything that is happening on the earth today is 100% wrong. It's gone from higher choices and lower choices to just out and outright wrong. A country to bomb another country and kill its citizens is not a learning opportunity anymore.
Mm-mm.
It is wrong. A person to go into a public setting and just shoot everybody up is wrong. We've gone beyond because we have forgotten who we are as divine beings. Then the choices we make are no longer in the realm of spirituality. They're completely in the realm of human choices and outside of the realm of growth. So now they've become as negative as it possibly can be here,
Let
which
me,
is what is affecting the earth as well. Go ahead. You
Now, I'm just
interrupt
going to
me
ask you a
now.
real quick question on that. So, how would
Yes,
you address this statement, which I know you've
yes, go
heard
ahead.
many times? Well, if we would just go back to the way it was and follow the 10 commandments and people would do that, then everything would be just fine.
Well, that's absolutely wrong, because the whole reason why the God source had to instill or give us some 10 guidelines, by the way, just so that you know, historically, the word commandment was never used when they first came out. They were guidelines, God's guidelines that Moses brought down. We attached the commandment word to it to make it more lawful and to use force in order to force people into believing. And that started in Judaism and then was passed down to Christianity when they chose to use it, which, by the way, Christians never concerned themselves about the 10 Commandments. They made their own rules: love, honor, and obey God. And remember, Jesus only referred to the top 2 commandments: love God with all your might, and then love your neighbor with all your heart and all their mind. So Christianity had nothing to do with the 10 Commandments, but they want to use it now, just like in Louisiana, that now wants to impose the 10 Commandments and put them up in school. Well, are they going to put up the 613 laws of Moses at the same time? Are they going to put up all the Islamic rules and all the other rules that there are for the other religions, for the other kids that are in the schools? Because if they do for one, they have to do for another. But that's beyond the point. The church and state is supposed to be separate according to the Constitution anyway. But that's beyond the point. They use the commandments to guilt you into acting good. They were guidelines. What are they guidelines about? And going back to them is not going to be enough. Understanding them will be enough. Every one of those supposed commandments or guidelines are about how humans wind up, and souls wind up feeling about themselves if they break any one of them. It makes them feel bad. I am living in the Bible Belt of North Carolina, and I was a hospice social worker, right? And the first commandment is love God with all your heart and all your might. In actuality, the first 5 commandments have to do with the way you treat the God force. And the next 5 commandments are how you treat your neighbors. So these people who are dying, as a hospice social worker, I was a hospice social worker, and I'm now working with all of these supposed Christians. And as they're dying, they're feeling bad that maybe they didn't believe in God enough. Maybe they didn't have enough faith, okay? So I'm looking at all of that and saying they're going through each one of the guidelines, especially the first 5, without even knowing that that's what they're doing. So when you're not doing each one of those, and there's a part that has been taught that you should, it makes you feel bad. Now, certainly when you rob somebody, that's going to make you feel guilty. And that's proof of that. If you study criminology at all, the whole reason why a person can become a criminal is from shame. Okay, because they were forced, because their sister is dying or their mother is dying. They have absolutely no resources to get the medication. They don't know what to do. They go down to the corner drugstore or corner store and they rob it to get money so that they can go buy drugs to help their mother. Now they're feeling bad about themselves because they robbed the store. Okay, now the mother winds up dying anyway. It doesn't matter. Now the sister is sick. And so the same person, a brother, big brother, whoever it is, turns around and says, well, I already robbed the store once, so I might as well just go down. What difference does it make? I'm a piece of dirt anyway. And so it gets to the point of shame that allows them to get to there and not care about themselves anymore and feel bad. So that commandment, just from robbing, made them feel bad about themselves. Committing adultery makes them feel guilty. They're married. They gave their love and devotion to one person. They promised that one person monogamy. Now they're off with somebody else. And within them, there is going to be shame. And they may not be able to control it, and they go on and do it again. But every one of those guidelines keeps us from feeling bad about ourselves. Why is that so important? Because the higher force intelligence knew every time you feel bad about yourself, which is what you did in the Garden of Eden, you pull further away from me and the understanding of your own divinity. And so that's the reason why those were put in place. So The answer, the correct answer is we're off the path. We have to go back to the core understandings of who we are. And the core understandings of who we are is our spiritual nature. You have to define it in a very strong, positive way. Who are we? What you just asked. Who are we as beings? What is our relationship to a higher force? What is our relationship to each other here? What is our relationship to the earth? Those four questions are the study of spirituality. Those are the core questions we have to go back to, and whatever guidelines we can use to help define and answer those questions, okay? The 10 Commandments don't actually answer who we are. They just give guidelines as to why while we're here discovering ourselves, right? But we have to answer those four questions, and that's your core work. Just like when you go to the gym and you want to exercise and become stronger, you may work out your upper body, your chest, your arms, your stomach. Well, but so before your stomach, you work out the lower body, your legs, your limbs, all of that. But you have to work out something more importantly in order to balance the upper body muscles with the bottom muscles. And what is that? Your core. You're always told to strengthen your core. And here's the funny thing physically. Core muscles are the weakest and the smallest muscles of the entire human body. And yet they're the most important. Our beliefs about ourselves are the smallest, hardest beliefs to work on, but yet they're the most important, because it doesn't matter if you become successful and a CEO of a company and you're making millions. If you don't have an understanding of who you are as a divine, magnificent being, those millions do not make you fulfilled and happy. I have Fortune 500 company CEOs calling me for readings because they have a miserable life. Those same people can get cancers and diseases that kill them early. So it doesn't matter what you achieve here in physical form as a human. It matters what you achieve here in physical form as a spirit having a physical experience. What are you using this body for? So you can buy your Mercedes and keep it in your garage, but if you don't use it, it's worthless. It's worthless. You have to use that to enjoy the ride and get going to where you want to be. The same physical body.
To all of what you have just said, I say hallelujah and amen.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Right.
Vincent Genna is my guest here. We're talking about the secret that holds you back, and vincentgenna.com is the website. We hope you will avail yourselves of that website that we will be linked to as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Vincent Genna has been my guest here on the program. I first of all thank you for giving us literally so much time. This is always a pleasure to talk with you and get your insights and to give me especially, but hopefully our listeners and viewers, something to think about and seriously ponder. And we really do appreciate the time you've given us.
Oh my God, Richard, thank you for inviting me. Listen, without lighthouses like you, I can't shine any light or message out there. So I appreciate you giving me the ability to be able to do that and help you even sharing your own message out there. So thank you very much for the invitation again.
And as always, we have 3 questions that we ask our guests, and they are changing from time to time over the years.
Okay, I'm excited.
But before I ask those questions, keeping you titillated there, I first want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Well, that's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then we're here on Sundays. I beg your pardon. We're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news. And then we stream live at all those times, all 9 9 of those times at richarddugan.com. We also podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. And I hope you'll subscribe and click notification so that when I post a new conversation, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in and listen. And I'm hoping glean something wonderful and new from the conversation. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we would be so grateful. If you'd like to be a part of what we are doing, thank you, thank you, thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. It's PayPal. It's there for you. When they ask you for an email address, why don't you put in the email address richard@richarddugan.com, and that way we can continue doing what we are doing. But again, as I've said before, I will not, never will I ever use the tactics that I certainly could have learned back in the 80s and early 90s at the Christian radio station that say, and if you do not support this program, then it's going to go off the air. We won't be able to produce it anymore. That's not going to happen. Okay. You do it because you want to, because you're inspired to do so, because you're led to do so. And I thank you for doing that. And I will continue to do this program just as long as I can, hopefully, and no more than roughly 100 years. By that I mean until I'm 100. It's just a goal of mine. Okay, it's one of those goals, and then when that goal is met, I'll be happy to ascend or leave the body. By the way, I am very familiar with ions. We have an announcement that we have within the program that we use. And I've had Barbara, I believe it's Bartholomew, on our program. I have to get her back on again to talk more about it, and we'll do that as well. Also, we ask you folks to spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice during the decade of perfect vision. We hope you'll take the time to do that. With all of that being said, we turn back to our guest and ask the first of those 3 questions, which is, who is Vincent Genna?
Vincent Genna is a person who has chosen to use my intuitive abilities that all humans have, develop them as a psychic therapist, a medium, a spiritual teacher, and an author to be able to help you live the life of your dreams. That's who Vincent Genna is. Plus, I'm married for 46 years, been together with my wife for 51, have 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and a 5th one on its way. And that's the private part of my life, which isn't so private. I share it with everybody anyway.
Well, congratulations. And also just a point of order, as it were, that on the 30th of June, my wife and I, who have been together for 26 years, will be, I can say renewing, but actually making our relationship official. Official.
Oh, we did that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So very excited about that. Second question. What gets you up in the morning?
The ability to be able to do the work that I love to do so much, which is this work. That's what gets me up in the morning. And to be able to live a life that is so rewarding and fulfilling, I have no problem getting out of bed doing that. A little bit more aches and pains as I'm getting out because of the age, Richard. But I still get up with that joy in my heart.
And finally, and I know that it sounds to me like this will be a hard question to answer, what was your best day?
My best day. Interesting. There is not one best day in my life. There are a few of them. The first best day was meeting my current wife, because she was the first one to believe in me and help end the torment that I was going through in my youth. The next best day is when I married her and made her a permanent part of my physical life. The next best day is when we had our son, especially on my birthday. The next best day is when we had our daughter 7 years later. And then each next best day after that was for our 4 grandchildren, which made all the other best days even that much better. And my next best day to come is tomorrow when I get to wake up and do more of this work. So that's the only honest way that I can answer that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope for all of your listeners, as well as yourself, that you have many best days because you can create it as best as you want to have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Vincent, I thank you once again for being a part of the work that we are doing here and us being a part of what you're doing by getting your message out as well. And we do look forward to having you back. Maybe what we'll do is maybe expand on that, which you alluded to earlier on in the program in terms of, just, why we're here and what we're doing and how we
Yeah,
need to make those
absolutely.
adjustments. So we'll
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful.
look forward to having you back again.
Absolutely and wonderful. And you know what's really funny? As you were just talking, I just received the message from the higher authority saying, "And what about your connection to us day?" I went, "Oh God, I forgot that best day." At 28 years old, when all of this happened to me, that was absolutely a gift and best day. I'm sorry. Gee, so it's okay to remind me every so often I'm old.
There you go. There you
There
go.
I go.
Well, thank you. And I thank you folks again for tuning in and listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.